So, Marie, couple therapy. A lot of couples get into a spot where they know they're in trouble in some way and they need a third party. What do we know about couple therapy?
Oh, now there's a big question.
Yeah, right?
I think I want to back up a little bit. Sometimes as a therapist, I'm working with an individual, and what's unfolding in the therapy is complaint after complaint and concern about the relationship.
Yeah.
And at that point, as a therapist, I have a decision to make. Am I going to continue with the individual therapy? And the danger there is I'm so in the individual's corner because I'm hearing everything through her or his filter, and of course I'm now thinking, well, of course she should throw the bum out.
Yeah, right.
There's actually some research being done, and I'm sorry I don't know the conclusion, that shows there's a very critical point there of where you should move into couple therapy. Because the danger is that, say you're my client, now I'm in your corner and we're talking about the bum at home.
Right.
And I can inadvertently become the place where you're working through my issues, when in fact the issues are with the partner, and in a way become a metaphorical affair in the marriage, because the emotional needs are getting met here, the problems are being met here. If the individual really wants to save the marriage or save the relationship,
got to get that person
in. Get that person in the room, because usually I find out it's not quite so black and white.
Yeah, they don't have horns and fangs.
No, sometimes, right. And sometimes it takes some doing to get that person to come in with the person they perceive as their partner's buddy. How can you possibly be neutral when you've been listening to my wife or husband all this time? But that falls on me to make a safe place for both of them. So once they do come in, that's the first challenge, is to be clear with the partner that just because I've been talking to your wife or husband for the last 6 months doesn't mean that I've already decided that you're the bad person. Sometimes we can overcome that hurdle, and sometimes, in fairness, we really can't. And I advise them to go find a therapist that they can both start fresh with. But once we either have the couple coming in or the individual joining their partner in therapy, now we have some hard work to do. And of course the first step, and maybe we can talk about this together, is to make the place feel safe.
Yes.
Because the issues that they haven't been talking about with each other, there's a reason they haven't been talking about it with each other. They're fearful, they're anxious, they don't want to be blamed, they've had these fights a gazillion times at home, and why would it be any different here? So how do we make it a safe enough environment for people to feel like they can start talking about the things they should be talking about and come away with something different? And of course there are many ways to do clinical work. I wouldn't presume to say that the way I've been trained and the way I do it is the way everybody should. But I think that's the fundamental foundation of good couple work, is now we can talk about the things that we haven't been successful talking about, and we can come to a different conclusion.
So this is so what you're really saying is that if somebody comes in for individual therapy, but it's really about a couple issue, that one of the things that you want to discern right away is if this really isn't for individual therapy, but it's really something that belongs more in a couple realm. So that's one of the first things that has to happen. And then if it is in a couple realm, then deciding if you're in the best place for that, because sometimes that would be unfair, because the other person would come in and either think that you're on their spouse's side, or even the perception of that. So it's like trying to help or make that decision.
I'd even go so far as to say that that's always the first issue.
Sure.
Because why wouldn't it be?
Of course.
You know,
of course.
I have an alliance with this person, and now another person's coming in. So that falls on us, is to level that issue. Once that's done, if it can be done, then it's about, okay, what ground rules can we set here that are going to make it okay to talk about the things that have been difficult? And people generally wade in. They test us out a little bit, right?
Sure.
They say, well, it's all about, I don't know, some minor issue about whether dinner should be at 6 or at 6:30.
Right.
But one of the things we know as therapists is we can talk about 6 or 6:30, and we're really talking about how people negotiate, how are they how well do they communicate with each other?
Right.
Are they able to talk about their own needs, or is it all about pointing fingers?
Yes.
So we can talk about whether we should have peas or beans for dinner, but we're still going to surface some of the same communication issues that are difficult. But I would go so far as to say is that some people come in and they say, we never communicate. And I say, no, you're communicating all the time.
Right.
You're not communicating in the way you'd like to.
Right.
So let's talk about where the communication breaks down and what people are protecting by not talking about things that maybe are a little bit more difficult to deal with. So instead of peas and beans, maybe we're going to talk about the fact that your mother has never liked me.
Yes.
And what a spot that puts you in, and how you've never stood up for me because, your mother has such control, whatever the issue is. I can go off on it.
Well, let me just summarize what we have so far.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what you're saying is really important, because I think sometimes couple issues start with individual therapy. So the first thing is to
mostly they do.
Right? Yeah. I think that's very, very true, because you need an outlet for it. So the first thing is to make the decision: is this individual therapy, or should this really be couple? And then the second thing is, if you're in that space, if that therapist is in the space, to be able to do that therapy, and ultimately to make the beginning of that therapy safe, so that both people feel heard and understood by the therapist. And if they can't be you because you've worked with somebody for a period of time, that, which is very, very understandable for the spouse that's coming in, to find a therapist where they do feel safe, so that dialogue can begin.
I'm going to add one more piece to that. Again, there are many ways to do work, but I can only state what my position is. What I try to avoid is what I call the committee of therapists, where one spouse has one therapist, another spouse has the other therapist, and then they're coming to me as a couple therapist. And I always feel, when I'm in that position as the couple therapist and discover that then I feel like there's an affair in my marriage, because I'm trying to do this work here, and then the one partner's going off with their parents and say, you wouldn't believe what happened in couple therapy, and of course the therapist is only getting that filter, and the other partner's doing the same thing, and of course the couple therapy goes nowhere. Right. I say, of course. My position is that once you decide to do couple therapy, if you're serious about it, let's keep all the issues in one room. And if I'm not the therapist for you because it's not going well for you, well, let's talk about that. And either that becomes the issue we're going to talk about, because of course we always bring into every encounter all our stuff. Right. So it could be that in the therapy we're playing out the same thing. Or it could be that I remind somebody of Matilda, who they never liked, and then we're just not going to get anywhere, in which case the thing to do is own that and refer people to someone that maybe they are more compatible with.
Sounds right.
Sound right? Good.